As long as YouTube comes back up, then we'll do this again. And waiting for YouTube. All right, there we are. All right, so here we go. Let's get back to where we were. I'm going to start back from the beginning is what we were talking about here. The topic here today is persuasion matters more than facts. Now, this is something that I've touched on a couple times here. I've touched on this a couple times over the last months, especially since we've been talking about politics, because people have such, varying opinions and varying ideas about politics and beliefs about politics. The challenge these days is not that people have different opinions. It's like back in the days, people had opinions about the Democrats and the Republicans and this candidate and that candidate. The difference was everyone agreed on a general points. They just had different views as to which one is better. So everybody agreed that this is what's happening, let's say, with taxes. And some people say, well, it's good to do taxes this way. Some people say, well, it's bad to do taxes that way. But we generally agreed on what we were disagreeing on. Like we have a disagreement, but it was clear why we were disagreeing. What's changed is now we don't even agree on what we're arguing about. That's what's changed, is that the facts of the situation are no longer agreed upon as they were back in the 90s or even the first part of the 2000s. We agreed on the facts. We just disagreed on how we felt about them. Nowadays, we can't even agree on the facts, let alone can we come to an agreement on even what we're disagreeing about. So as I was explaining before the internet went out, and I'll re-explain this, is that reality is negotiable. I talked about this in episode 1062 on my podcast called Work on Your Game. I call it a masterclass, comes out every day, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Everybody has their own separate reality. This has always been the case. The issue is now that we all have our own platforms through which to broadcast our realities, and because the mainstream media is no longer doing this job of giving us some type of objective way of understanding reality, now everything is warped. Everything is thrown out of whack from where it used to be. So objective facts don't matter nearly as much as they used to because of the way that we use our devices and the way that we all can, again, come up with our own views of what's happening in the world. So all of these separate realities we have become our quote unquote facts. So what happens is, while facts are not exactly irrelevant these days, they don't matter nearly as much as they used to. And we all have these subjective ways of looking at things, and we have to learn how to navigate the subjective realities that other people have, along with our own subjective realities and subjective judgments, and find what makes sense to bring into any interaction, because you still need to be able to get other people to see things your way, to agree with you. You want to still win friends and influence people. This is why your ability to persuade and influence matters more than whatever facts you may have hold of, whatever facts you have access to, or whatever facts you believe and or want to share. That's why influence and persuasion matters a lot more now than it used to. So with all that said, let me be clear to all of you. You don't have to love this reality. Again, I'm a type of person who likes to base things in as being as objectively as humanly possible, being logical, and having facts on my side. The problem is it just doesn't matter anymore these days. It's just not as important, and it isn't not as emphasized or as valued now as it used to be. So introducing myself, for those who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year pro athlete, author of 40 books, done 4 TEDx talks, created this brand called Work on Your Game. Our focus over here is on high-level performance done consistently to produce results. You can learn more about that by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Let's get into our points here because I got a lot. Number one, objectivity, ladies and gentlemen, is on life support. Objectivity is on life support. Now, what exactly does that mean? Because it doesn't pay to be completely objective anymore, at least not the way that it used to. It used to pay to be very objective, to be the type of person who could take any situation in which people are highly divided and be able to explain it and help everybody understand, well, here's what's happening, here's what's not happening, here's what you need to understand, here's the argument from this side, here's the argument from the other side. It used to be value if someone could do that. These days, yes, it is still valued, but the audience of people who are interested in it has gotten smaller. There are fewer people interested in an objective observation of a situation, fewer people looking to be just completely logical and dispassionate about things, and many more people who would rather be pushed to one side or the other because they are highly emotionalized on whatever view or belief they have decided to have on certain situations. You see, everybody's always had opinions, or we've always had opposing opinions. People have always disagreed on things. That's not new. What's new is the entities whose very existence was all based on being objective and sharing the facts, they got out of the game. They got out of the game of being objective and sharing just the facts and the truth of a situation. This industry was called journalism, Some of you may call it the mainstream media, but for the most part, the mainstream media was supposed to be in the business of doing journalism. Not everybody there was a journalist, but they're supposed to be in the business of doing journalism. If you don't know what journalism means, all of you have heard of the phrase, but let me make it very clear to you. Journalism means seeking and chasing after the truth. It means getting to, that's what journalism means. It means get to the truth. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter where that truth leads. Your job is to get to the truth. The mainstream media's job was always to get to the truth. They got out of the business of getting to the truth, and instead they got into the business of partisanship, which is basically pushing the audience towards one side or another side instead of just being objective and just letting the audience decide on their own. That's the big change that has occurred over the last 20 years, is that the mainstream media is no longer doing the job that we expected them to do, which has it helped them in a way in that they got a stronger partisan audience on certain subjects, but it hurt them more than it helped them because it has caused people to no longer trust them. And it has pushed people to take advantage of listening to independent producers and independent platforms such as live streaming, podcasting, TikToking, Substacks, etc. And why this hurts the mainstream media is because, again, the main thing that we wanted from them was the truth, objectivity, just trying to get to the facts. Or trying to get to the truth, rather. They don't do that anymore. They decided to get out of that game. They tried to get in the game they shouldn't have been in, and they ended up losing. And now they can't get that respect back. They cannot get that trust back because they traded it for attention. And the mainstream media specifically, again, their trust was based in you're being objective. You're trying to tell us the truth, at least trying to. When it became obvious that they no longer were in that business, we didn't trust them anymore because that's what we want from them. So when you establish yourself in a business as being known as one thing, you may want to keep delivering that thing or you're going to lose a significant portion of your audience. It's just the way that it works. I used to play basketball, for example, and I used to put out a bunch of basketball content. And when I stopped putting out basketball content, a bunch of people who only wanted basketball or they needed basketball, they stopped listening to stuff that I was saying because it wasn't relevant to them anymore. And that's completely fine. So there's nothing wrong with making a change if you need to make a change. At the same time, you need to know what kind of change you're making. And if you get into another thing, you better be good at that thing. Otherwise, you're going to lose. Mainstream media tried to play the social media game, and they're not as good at social media as people who actually play the social media game, and they lost. And this is why the mainstream media is losing more and more credibility by the day. Moving on. Here's what's changed. As I already explained to you, more of what's changed. The media has expanded from being a handful of companies to being everybody. All of us are the media now. I'm the media. You're the media. Everybody's the media. So when we say the media, we got to be clear what we're talking about. That's why I say the mainstream media. That's the establishment companies, newspapers, people who work there, etc. But the media in general is every human being on the planet because we all got phones. Any of us can get online and do a live stream or make a post or a status update and say whatever it is that we want to say. And anything that any of us post could get out to a whole bunch of people who we don't even know. And now they are being influenced and persuaded by the thing that we said, even if it's not true. So the media has expanded. Now everybody is the media, and a bunch of people who are publishing media do not care about getting to the truth. They just care about saying what they want to say, which is what social media ostensibly is designed for. Social media was designed for all of us to just share our opinions, share our perspectives and tell people what we want to tell them, whether it's true or not. Each one of us individually is not held to any type of journalistic standard to where you have to be telling the truth or trying to tell the truth. Now, if you're a journalist and you work for the New York Times, allegedly, you're supposed to be held to a journalistic standard. Now, we know that they don't do that anymore. And the reason they don't do it is because they're trying to compete with social media, which does not have the same standards. You can do anything on social media, and if it gets attention, it gets attention. In the mainstream media, you're supposed to do certain things that may not be as exciting because somebody dancing on TikTok might get more engagement than you just telling the truth about a news item. And again, this is where the mainstream media messed up because they started paying attention to things they shouldn't have been paying attention to. Like, how do we get more engagement on our stuff? Well, objectivity is not as engaging as silliness. It's just not. Entertainment is always going to beat education. Entertainment will always beat education if you're just in a race for attention. Because think about it. How many times have you ever seen a line of people outside of the movie theater trying to get in? You've seen that before. How many times you've seen a crowd of people going to a concert? You've seen that before. Have you ever seen a crowd of people or a line outside of a library? You've never seen it. Why? Because education is not as enticing as entertainment. Social media is generally entertainment. the mainstream media is generally more educational. They're never going to win that fight. The mistake that they made was deciding that they want to get in that fight, and they lost. That's the problem. If they would have won, then it would have been a good decision, but they lost. So it ends up being a bad decision. So the mainstream media now skews the facts to influence opinion and draw more attention and money to themselves. The challenge is the trade-off of drawing more attention and money, which the mainstream media did do at least slightly, is that they also traded their credibility. And then as that credibility continues to erode and people realize, oh, we have other options. I can go listen to this podcaster. I can go subscribe to this person's Substack. I can go watch this person on YouTube. I can go follow this person on TikTok who explains the news. I don't need to listen to the mainstream media at all. Now they're slowly losing everything. That's the problem. And the issue with this, again, is that when everybody is the media, you can have 1 million different opinions and 1 million different subjective points of view on the exact same subject. Whereas, again, back in the day, you might have had 5 or 6 different points of view because you have 5 or 6 different news networks or newspapers. Nowadays, you got 5 million different networks, 5 million different platforms, and 5 million different people all sharing their own opinions. That's why it feels like everybody is divided. But when we're really not divided, it's just that everybody has a platform through which to share their opinion. That was never the case in the past. So here's an opinion I'll tell you. All right, I'm labeling this as an opinion that I'm giving you. And we're talking here today why persuasion matters more than facts. I feel that the right, meaning like the conservatives politically, they steadily over a 10-year period against Obama and the changing world with social media, they were doing this too. A lot of people these days will say, well, it's just the left that's doing it. And because Donald Trump is in place, that is accurate. And that's the reason why. These days, it's the left, the political left. And whether that's people actually in politics or it's the media companies that support the political left, such as CNN, MSNBC, etc., CBS, these platforms on the left are so staunchly against Donald Trump that they will skew the facts of a situation to make it seem like Trump is the most terrible human being on the planet. Any of you follow social media, you all know this. You don't have to be a Trump supporter or a Trump hater. All of us can observe this. What I'm saying here, though, and that a lot of you may not realize or even think about, is that the political right was doing this as well. They were doing it against Barack Obama because Barack Obama had 2 terms, the same way Trump is on his 2nd term, even though Barack's were back to back and Trump's had a gap in between. They were doing the exact same thing to Barack Obama. Actually, let me back up. Take out that word exact. They were doing the same thing to Barack Obama, but not the way it's being done to Trump. What the right politically was doing to Barack Obama was taking everything he did, making it seem terrible, and basically gassing up their audience to hate Barack Obama and go against Barack Obama. That set the scene for Donald Trump to be able to emerge because there were so many people so mad and angry about what Obama was doing because the media on the right. So this is, for those of you who remember, these are your Rush Limbaughs, your Bill O'Reillys, the Fox Newses. They were going hard against everything Obama did, the same way that the mainstream media goes hard against everything Trump does. The issue is now with social media being the thing, because social media kind of existed during Obama's time, but it wasn't nearly as big as it is now. All of you understand that. Now with social media out, the mainstream media platforms, again, pulled the same playbook. They just flipped it around and used it on Trump. The thing is, now they can get on social media to amplify the message. They are skewing the opinions of the people, and the people can get on social media to amplify the message. So if there was this much pushback against Barack Obama, it was like this level from the political right. The amount of pushback against Donald Trump from the political left is like this. It's like 3, 4, 10 times, I can't even reach my arms up, higher than it was against Obama. That's the issue because social media has allowed any message to be amplified in ways that the mainstream media just did not have this type of control during Barack Obama's term. It wasn't out of control then. Even though they were pushing back against Obama, they were pushing back against him it was kind of like, they say there's honor amongst thieves. Even though we knew what people were doing against Barack Obama, they were doing it with a level of, there was some decorum in the game back then, for lack of a better term. There was actually some honor amongst thieves. So I could be working for Fox News, or I could be Bill O'Reilly or Rush Limbaugh, and I'm trashing everything that Barack Obama does and making it seem terrible. And I'm stirring up my audience in the process of doing it. But at the same time that I was doing it, I was still doing it in a professional way. I was being like a professional hater of Barack Obama. They were doing that in a professional way back then. Nowadays, all the rules have been thrown out. There is no honor amongst thieves these days. people will take anything and skew it, blow it out of proportion, skew it, and use things that are not even true and just keep saying them over and over again. See, they weren't doing that with Obama. For the most part, they weren't doing that with Obama. With Trump, they're doing it. They're taking things that are factually untrue and just repeating them over and over and over again, getting other people to repeat them to the point that people have accepted them as realities when they are not reality at all. And the thing is, there's no way to get people to realize that what they have come to believe is not true, because again, they don't have to go to any one source to fact check anything that they believe, or to reality check, or to objectivity check anything they believe. You can just believe something and go on believing it. And then you get on the internet and you see a bunch of other people saying it. So you're like, oh, well, I'm not living in a bubble. Look at all these people agreeing with me. See, you didn't have that back in 2009. You got that now. That's what's become the real change. So again, I will say the political right started this kind of, they started it in the way they went after Barack Obama, but they did it with a level of, again, decorum and honor amongst thieves that has been completely thrown out the window when Donald Trump got involved. And people just said, there were mainstream media outlets that said this. I believe it was a guy from the New York Times. He said this. He said that we know that it is our journalistic duty to report things objectively and try to get to the truth. However, because Donald Trump is such a different animal when it comes, he didn't use the word animal, but he's such a different animal when it comes to politics, and he plays the game in a way that is so different from the way every other politician plays the game. We decided, this is a guy from the New York Times saying this, we decided that we were going to change the way we reported on politics just for Donald Trump, because he is so different from every other politician out there. And what he was saying without actually saying it was, we decided to abandon our journalistic integrity because we had to talk about Trump in a different way in order to influence our audience. That statement that he said, and again, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that is accurate as to what he said. And then I'm giving you my view of what he was saying. This is when they decided to abandon journalistic integrity. That's what they did. They decided we're going to abandon journalistic integrity. We're not going to report on this guy objectively and try to get to the truth. We're going to report on him in such a way that because he's pushing so hard this way, we're going to push back this way. And as soon as you start doing that, you're not doing journalism anymore. What you're doing is you're giving your opinion, which is fine if you want to give your opinion. The problem with giving your opinion, if you have already established yourself as a place we're supposed to come to for objectivity and truth, is that you lose your credibility. This is why the mainstream media lost so much credibility. And one of the reasons why that guy from the New York Times, the reason why they were willing to do that and say, we're going to report on Trump differently than everybody else, is because Donald Trump was attacking the New York Times. If you remember back in 2016, during Donald Trump's first run to president, if you were following him on social media, you saw he was trashing the New York Times every opportunity he got. Every opportunity he got, he was trashing the New York Times. And he would trash CNN and a bunch of other entities and individuals. He was trashing them. And because he was trashing them so much, they felt like they were losing the credibility. They felt like they were in a fight against Donald Trump. So they decided to fight against him when they shouldn't have done that. What they should have done, if they had people there with some common sense, is, you know what, we're going to keep reporting on him objectively, fairly, and truthfully. But instead, what they decided to do is we're going to go fight against him. So now we're going to become the opposition. And again, they lost a ton of their credibility because now it's obvious you all are just saying anything to make Trump look bad. You're not being objective anymore. We don't trust you. This is the American people talking. Because the New York Times is always known as the paper of record. If you wanted to get the final objective truth as to what happened, you read the New York Times. No more. They threw it out the window because they felt like they needed to get in a fight with Donald Trump. And look where they are now. All right. So here's another opinion. It is within the right, I believe, is more subjective than the left, depending on the political climate. So let me say that different. When Trump is winning, the left became a lot more subjective about things. And when Obama was winning, the right became more subjective. So it kind of goes back and forth. It's like playing a game of tennis, depending on who's winning. And what it all means and what it has to do with subjectivity and objectivity is the following. Mass media, which now includes all of us, it covers a lot of what we see, right? What we talk about and what we think we know, all right? And we all think that we are independent thinkers, but most of us are not independent thinkers. We are highly influenced and persuaded by the things that we see, hear, and experience. And since no one is any more incentivized to be objective and emotionless, everyone has an angle. And the further you go with that angle, as we can see, the more beneficial it becomes. So if I was, for example, coming on here, like I do these lives, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. If I was to do a live every single day, just trashing Donald Trump in some way, shape, or form, I would grow a really, really big audience of people who would be in that audience. The people in that audience would be people who hate Donald Trump and they want to hear somebody explain why he's terrible. They will buy into it, even if I was lying, even if I was just making shit up. A bunch of people will be in that audience because they don't like Donald Trump. So anything that makes Donald Trump look bad, they would be happy. And on the flip side, if I was to just come on here every day and I would take anything Donald Trump does and make it seem like it's amazing. This guy's the smartest person in the world. He's the greatest leader ever. He's just be president forever. And I did that every day. I would get a whole big audience of people who want to hear that. And either audience, if I went either direction, here's the thing you should get. I will have a lot more of an audience than with the audience that I get when I try to be objective and I try to logically explain what's actually happening. And I try to be, as much as I can, in the middle of the situation, just explain, okay, here's why this side thinks this way. Here's why this side thinks this way. And I will mix in my opinions with that. But if I just went hard on one side or another, I would get a lot more people, because there's a lot of people who would rather just have their emotions stoked and their feelings stoked and hear more of what they already believe than have their feelings, not their feelings, but their beliefs and opinions challenged. Most people don't want to have their beliefs and opinions challenged if those beliefs and opinions are very strong in one direction as opposed to another. Now, if you have beliefs and opinions on something and you kind of hold on to them loosely, you don't mind somebody challenging your opinion, right? Because you're not emotionally bought into it. But any opinion that you are emotionally bought into, most people don't really want to have those opinions challenged. So as soon as they hear it being challenged, they either fight back strongly against it with emotion of their own, or they disperse, they leave the room so that they don't have to have that opinion challenged. So if you follow me on Instagram, for example, you see every once in a while, I'll post like a meme post, which is like just the text, a screenshot of something that I wrote down. And I'll usually talk about something political or some type of social issue. You'll notice that anytime somebody leaves a comment on one of those posts, they usually are commenting because they agree with what I said. And they're just saying, all right, cool, I agree with that. Or most of the time, a lot of the comments will be people disagreeing with me. And you'll notice that their disagreements are usually rooted in their feelings and emotions, not rooted in anything objective. They may try to make it sound objective, but it's usually rooted in feelings and emotions because they disagree with what I'm saying. So they're trying to make it sound logical because, again, you don't want to sound like you're just emotional on the subject. But again, I can point out the logical fallacies in most of their pushback because most people are not logical. I just explained this to you. Persuasion matters more than facts. That's just the situation that we're in these days. Persuasion matters a lot more than facts. And if you can persuade and influence people, even if you're lying, then it will draw a lot more attention than if you just tell people straight up the truth. So my angle personally is that I'm not on any side politically. I have no political side. So when I make posts talking about social issues or talking about politics or talking about Trump or Kamala or whatever, it's not because I personally like any politician or I personally am in favor of any political party, because I'm not, and I don't. It's just me objectively observing what's happening. And I'm doing it while using politics because I know it's going to get people to react. It's going to get people to respond. And you got to understand, when you get on social media, you are in the attention business. It is your job. If you're going to post, is you probably want people to see what you have to say, even if they disagree with it. You probably want people to see it or hear it or experience it, whatever it is. So I could talk about these same subjects without even mentioning politics. Everything I'm talking about here today, I could do this without ever mentioning politics. But when I bring politics into the conversation, more people listen and pay attention and respond and leave comments and say stuff. Why? Because everybody has an opinion. Everybody has an opinion on politics, especially as long as Trump is around. Now, when he goes away, I think it might die down a little bit. There'll be fewer people reacting, depending on who comes in next. But generally, he's drawn more attention and more reaction and response from people in general than anyone else. I never talked about politics really at all in my content until he came around. And the reason why I started talking about it is because, not necessarily because of him, but indirectly because of him, because everybody else had a reaction to it. And I noticed, damn, everybody has a reaction to this guy. Everybody has an opinion on this guy. So if I talk about this guy, guess what? More people are going to pay attention to what I'm saying. So I am using him. Shout out to Donald Trump. Thank you, Donald Trump. I am using him to draw more attention to my overall message, which is not really about politics at all, even though some people may hear my message and see it and think that I am political just because I'm talking about politics. I'm just talking about it because it works to get people's attention. That's what it is. It works. So if you want to get people's attention, talk about Donald Trump. The challenge is you only got 4 years at the most before he's not around anymore. So you're gonna have to find something else to talk about. You got to have some substance to come in behind drawing that attention. That's the thing that a lot of social media, TikTokers, they ain't got. They got the sugar, not even the sugar. What do we call it? What's it called? Sugar, the junk food, which is the thing that'll get people's attention. But can you keep people's attention once you have it, even if you can't use that thing that got their attention in the first place anymore? That's the part. That's when you really find out. So anyway, I'm here to help all of you understand what you're seeing and how it's aiming to influence you, because every human being on the planet has an angle. Everybody has an angle. I have angles. You have angles. An angle is just the thing that makes you not completely objective. Right? No human can be completely objective. It's humanly impossible, because we all have our subjective experiences. But all of you will be well advised to decipher anybody you listen to talking about anything. What is their actual aim? What are they actually trying to do? How are they actually trying to influence or persuade you? Because nobody does something for nothing. No human on the planet does something for nothing. Any of us, when we're talking about something, we're trying to get some point across and trying to help people understand something that comes from our angle. I'm trying to persuade you to see things the way that I see them. That's why I'm talking about them. But I'm not trying to push you to the left or to the right or to support Trump or hate Trump. I don't really give a damn what your opinion is about him. What I'm trying to help you understand is why the situation is happening the way that it's happening. And there is an audience of people out there who want to hear a logical and as humanly possible objective explanation of what's going on, not because I'm trying to influence you to one side or the other. Generally, I do not believe that any of us should be too dependent or get too excited about anything that politicians do, because the government is not designed to help you. It may help you, but it's not designed to help you. And if you think it's going to help you, you're the one who's getting played. So I don't really give a damn about anybody's political opinion, and I'm not on any political side. As I said, I've never been paid or not been an endorsee of any political faction, which is why I have the position to say what I'm saying, because I'm not owned by anybody. Moving on to point number 7. Now, why does subjectivity matter more than facts? Because that's what we've been talking about here today. Why does subjectivity matter as much as it does these days? Because we can insulate ourselves from any fact that we don't want to hear. This did not used to be the case. This was not the case 15, 20 years ago. If there were facts that made you uncomfortable, you had to sit there and deal with those facts. Nowadays, if there are facts and realities that make you uncomfortable, you can set your world up in such a way that those facts and realities never confront you, that you never have to come across them ever again if you don't want to. That's what's changed. That's what's different about the world here today, is that I can get on social media. I go on all the apps: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble, maybe not Rumble, YouTube, LinkedIn, X. I get on all those apps, and you know what I can do? I can follow a whole bunch of people on any side politically, either side politically, and only follow those people. And all I would ever hear or see are people who agree with what I already believe, and people who are confirming what I already believe. I could set my life up in such a way that that's all I would consume. And I would consume so much that I really think that I'm highly informed, because I'm consuming all this material, and it just confirms what I already believe. So you couldn't do that 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you had no choice. If you watch the news, you would hear some news on one side, you hear some news on the other side, but you had to hear all of it. Nowadays, you don't have to hear anything you don't want to hear. That's why it feels like people are we're divided amongst each other more than ever before. It feels that way. Why? Because of this. It's so easy to just silo yourself off into only hearing what you want to hear. You don't have to hear anything you don't want to hear if you don't want to. Like when I'm on social media, if somebody comes in my comments and I don't like the things that they're saying because they're disagreeing with me, I can just block everybody who disagrees with me and only hear from people who agree with me if I wanted to. But I tell people, you can come on my lives and disagree with anything that I say. If you want to have a dialogue, come on my live stream and talk to me. I don't really do back and forth in the comments. I respond to a couple of comments by people on most apps, maybe one comment I'll respond to. Maybe I'll go a level or two deeper, but I'm not going to do a back and forth with you in the comments. I'm not doing it. But if you come to my lives, you can disagree, and I'll respond to what you say, and I'll see what else you have to say. As long as you're here on time, I'll do it. So just in case any of you know somebody or you ever disagree with something that I say, come to one of my live streams, leave it in the comments. I'll respond to what you say. I'll give you a chance to respond to what I said, and that's how we'll do the dialogue. At least going to be benefit by doing it on my live stream, but I benefit zero from going back and forth with anyone in comments. So don't come in my comments trying to debate me. That's not happening. Anyway, So because we can silo ourselves off to any subject these days, this is why, again, it feels like this division is so big, because we choose our own news channels. Again, I could just follow a whole bunch of people who hate Donald Trump, and I would think Donald Trump is like the devil, because that's all I'm listening to. I'm not hearing anybody who's pushing back on anything that they're saying. That's all I'm seeing. Right? I can follow a bunch of people on YouTube who are the same, a bunch of people on TikTok who are the same. And again, you can't say I'm uninformed, because look at all the information I'm taking in. It just all happens to be the same flavor of information. You get it? And these days, you have the choice to do that. You have the option to do that if you want to do it. What I suggest, if you want my suggestion, I suggest that you consume material on both sides of any conversation. And here's the challenge that I give to every person. Anytime somebody comes to me and they have a really strong argument on one side or another of any subject, I ask them, what is the opposing argument to the one that you have? And that's one question. What's the opposing argument to the one that you have? Number two, what is your response to that opposing argument? And number three, if you decided to change your opinion to the exact opposite argument than the one you have now, could you still keep your job and keep all your friends? Those are the three questions that I ask. Can I give you those three questions again? Anytime so let's take a strong opinion that everybody can relate to. Let's say somebody hates Donald Trump, right? Let's say you hate Donald Trump. You think he's terrible. You think he's the worst person in history, right? So my first question is, someone who thinks Donald Trump is amazing, what would they say? What's the best argument for someone who has the exact opposite opinion of you? And I don't mean like a straw man argument. Like somebody will say, well, anybody who likes Donald Trump, well, they like him because he's stupid and because he's racist, he's homophobic. No, I don't mean the sarcasm. I mean like an actual solid argument for why somebody would like Donald Trump. What is it? What is the strongest argument that opposes your argument? That's the first thing. It's called the steel man. So a straw man is when you basically take what somebody else says and you make it weaker, and then you beat it up and then say, well, I beat your opinion up because look, you basically made a weak version of their opinion and then you argued against it. That's called a straw man fallacy. A steel man, on the other hand, is when you flip it around and you take somebody's opinion who opposes yours and you actually make it better. And then you ask yourself, what's my response to that? So what's a strong argument against you? That's number one. Number two, what's your response to that strong argument? So if you hate Donald Trump, first question is, somebody who loves him, what do they say? Second question is, what's your response to what they say? Your actual response, logical response to what they say because they like them. And number three, if you were to change your opinion, would you keep all your friends and keep your job? And I've asked this question to people online, and you know what kind of answers I get? I get no answers. Nobody responds to it because they can't. And this is what I tell anytime somebody comes to me with a really strong opinion on any side of anything, I just ask them, if you had the opposite opinion, would you keep your career and keep all your friends? And the answer for most people is no. You get fired from your job if you had a different opinion, and your friends, your quote unquote friends, wouldn't like you anymore because you have a different opinion. They were never your friends in the first place. And this is why I tell people. I remember I said something about the jabs. I remember I said this on Instagram. This is months ago. I said something on Instagram about the jabs, and somebody was in the comments trying to debate me. And the things that they were saying just didn't quite add up. So I asked them, what do you do for a living? They said they're a nurse. They work in the medical industry. And I said, well, of course you're in this, because they were basically pro jabs. And that's fine. If you want to be pro jab, be pro jab. I said to the person, well, you work in the medical industry. You don't have a choice but to be pro jab, because if you were anti jab, you would get fired from your job. Is this true or not? I said that to him. If you were anti-jab, you would have gotten fired because you didn't take the jab, and you would get fired for even speaking out against the jab publicly. So who are you to kind of argue with me? You don't really have a leg to stand on. You actually can't argue the opposite point of your opinion because you're not allowed to. You don't even have an option. And there's a difference between having options, folks, and having no choices. See, if somebody, I remember I was walking with my son yesterday, and we were walking through a parking lot, and I told him he was trying to pull his hand away. And I said, you got to hold my hand because we're walking around cars. You got to hold my hand anytime we're near cars. And he said, no. And I was telling him, you have to hold my hand. And then I said to him, son, this is not an option. You have to hold my hand. I'm not giving you a choice. And he responded back and said, yes, it is an option. I said, no, it's not an option because you only got one. See, it's not an option when you only got one choice. It's an option when you have two or more. So I was telling this guy who works in the medical industry, dude, you don't have an option to not support the jab because you would have got fired. So who are you to argue against somebody who is against the jab when you don't even have the position where you could be against it? You don't have a choice. That's not a choice. Everybody understand this? So these are things all you should ask yourselves. Anytime you have a strong opinion on anything, what's the argument against you? What is your response to the argument against you? And if you had the opposite opinion, would you keep everything you currently have? Could you keep your job with the opposite opinion? And could you keep your friends with the opposite opinion? And I remember I was talking to somebody who works in the educational space, and they work at a university that tends to lean pretty liberal. And same thing, I would ask them, if you had the opposite opinion, would you still have your job this time next year? The answer is probably no. And also, all your friends, your professional friends, would they still be your friends if you had the opposite opinion from the one you have now? The answer is hell no, because they're not really your friends. They only like you because you got the same opinions. So everybody's out here faking. And I'm not saying everybody in the world, but depending on what space you operate in, there's a whole lot of fakeness going on. And I call people out on their bullshit. That's the thing with me. I will call you out on your bullshit and ask you to respond to the things that I'm saying. And most of the time, people don't respond. They either block me, or they just don't respond to me, or they just don't say anything in the first place because they know that I'm calling them on their nonsense. Anyway, a person can live their whole life seeing only one interpretation of things nowadays. This was not the case 20 years ago. Now you live your whole life only seeing one way of looking at things. Never be confronted with anything that goes against what you believe. And here's the thing you need to understand. You will run into these people. All of you listening to me, you will engage with these people. You will meet these people in life. Might be some of you who are listening to me. I doubt it, but some of you might fit this description. But if you don't fit this description, you will meet people who fit this description, and you're going to have to engage with them. You're going to have to talk to these people. So you better have your material ready, because their subjective view of life will matter to them a whole lot more than any quote unquote facts you try to give to them. This is why people don't listen to facts these days. Facts don't matter. I told y'all this earlier. Facts do not matter. And when I say facts don't matter, it's not that a fact can't be useful in some cases, but compared to influence and persuasion, facts no longer matter nearly as much as they used to. So if you want to influence people and you want to move people to action, you want to get people to see things your way, you must learn how to influence and persuade them, not give them a bunch of facts. Facts are not persuasive. Did everybody hear that? Facts are not persuasive. They used to be persuasive. They weren't really that persuasive, but they're even less persuasive than they've ever been, because first of all, facts require logical thinking, and thinking is work. Most people are lazy. Most people don't want to think. So when you give people a fact, they have to understand the fact, they have to interpret the fact, and then they have to figure out how the fact fits into their worldview. That's work. Most people don't want to work. So if you want to influence people, you got to give them something that they don't have to work in order to absorb. That's what influence is about. That's what persuasion is about. So one of the key criticisms you hear people say about Donald Trump and his supporters is that, well, he only gets people who are not that smart to agree with him. Well, getting people who are not that smart to agree with you is a skill. Donald Trump is great at persuasion. He's one of the best persuaders you have seen. Better than Barack Obama. Barack Obama is better at speaking. His speaking skill, like the actual ability to put words together smoothly, Barack is better than Trump. Trump is up there. But when it comes to persuasion, Trump is better than Barack. And those are two different skills. A lot of people conflate them and think they're the same thing. Your ability to speak is your ability to influence and persuade. Not necessarily. Barack Obama's, they're both very high level at both. Let me be clear. Barack Obama is very good at influencing and persuading, but Donald Trump's better. Donald Trump is good at speaking, but Barack Obama is better. And they're both very good because both of them won the biggest job in the United States of America twice. All right. So you can't say somebody's not good at speaking when they won the biggest job in the fucking country 2 times. All right, that's impossible. A lot of people who hate Trump try to say that. Well, he's not that good of a speaker. Well, he won the fucking election twice and might have won it 3 times, depending on who you ask. All right. There's no way you can say he's not good at getting a bunch of people to be influenced and persuaded by him. And then people say, well, he only influenced the dumb people. Okay, right. So all the people who agree with you, they're the smart people. And all the people who disagree with you, they're the stupid people, right? No, right. Right. That makes perfect sense, right? And this is the coke that a lot of people throw out there, right? Have you heard people say stuff like this? Like, yeah, only people who voted for Donald Trump are the dumb people. The people who are uneducated, they all voted for Trump. And then all the smart people, they voted for the loser. So how smart are you? I mean, again, this is just a question I'm asking. All right, if all the smart people voted for the person who lost, maybe you're not that smart. Or here's the quote. They say, oh, well, there are just not that many smart people around. So there's only a few of us. There are more dumb people. So the dumb people, is a bigger group. So that's why the dumb people actually won the election and voted for Trump. So here's my question to anybody who has that thought, or any of you who runs into someone who says this, because people are saying this shit. If they say that, here's the thing you should ask them. Okay, since you and the people who agree with you are so smart, why were you all not able to figure out how to reach the stupid people and get them to see things the way that you see them? All right, you ain't that smart. because Donald Trump's come around twice. This is actually 3 times. He's been in 3 elections, right? 2016, 2020, now 2024. So you had 8 years to figure out exactly what he's doing. You know his formula, right? He talks to the stupid people, right? So if he's talking to the stupid people and he has a whole bunch of stupid people believing in him, you all, as smart as you are, had 8 years to figure out how to beat him at his own game and you couldn't figure it out. So how smart are you really? You had 8 years to figure it out and you still got it wrong. If you had 8 years to study for a test, would it make sense to fail the test? So any of you who runs into one of these smart people, one of these quote unquote educated people who says the only reason Trump won is because he speaks to the uneducated people. The question is, okay, since you're so smart, you had 8 years to get ready to beat him and you still failed? Or maybe you ain't that smart. Maybe you got to look in the mirror and realize you ain't that smart. And see, when you pose that to people, nobody responds to it. I pose this question to people online. X is the app that I mostly use for engagement. Like I will go back and forth with you on X. Generally, I will go back and forth with people on X. That's the only place I go back and forth because that's where people are talking about current events. And I've asked this question. Nobody's had a legitimate answer to it yet. Nobody's answered the question yet because there is no answer to the question because it's just cope. Cope is just the word that we use these days colloquially, but what it actually is what we call rationalization. Rationalization is when you come up with a rational lie that makes your reality seem okay. That's a rationalization. So a rationalization would be like a guy goes out to the mall and he tries to talk to a girl and the girl's not interested in him. And he says, oh, well, she just hates men or she's a lesbian. She don't like men. No wonder she wouldn't talk to me. All right. That's a rationalization that she was just not interested in you. All right. That's the truth. But most people don't want to give themselves the truth. So they rationalize and they come up with a story that makes the situation seem okay when it's actually not okay. But in order to admit that it's not okay, you had to look in the mirror and realize that maybe what you thought is not true. And that's the challenge. A lot of people don't want to have that kind of personal conversation with themselves that maybe what I thought was true just ain't true. Because that would require people who think they're really smart to realize that maybe they're not as smart as they thought they were. And this is not even an example. This is real. Look at, again, when Kamala lost, you saw people saying this a couple of days after the election. Oh, all the educated people voted for Kamala and all the uneducated people voted for Trump. Okay, so if you're so educated, why don't y'all figure it out? Anyway, so what to do about this? First of all, let me tell you what not to do. Okay, so let me help you all out with what not to do. Here's what you don't do. Do not confront people by telling them that their subjective reality is wrong or trying to show them that their subjective reality is wrong. I'm explaining that to you all so you understand how people think. I'm not explaining this to you so that you go and start saying this to people. Don't say this to people because it's not going to work. All it's going to do is make people mad at you. All right. So if you're trying to make people mad at you, then you can tell them what I just told you. But if you want to actually try to influence and persuade people, don't tell them that their subjective reality is wrong because they're not going to agree with you. That's going to get you nowhere. And all it's going to get is people to ignore you. But instead, what you should do is let someone express why their reality is what it is and use the Socratic method. Some of you may have heard of that term. Socratic method simply means asking questions. That's all it means. Just ask questions. Ask questions and let the other person talk so they can explain their reasoning and they can explain their logic, if they have any, and how they came to their conclusions. And the more they talk and explain it, the more obvious it will become the holes in their thinking. And then you can point out the holes in their thinking, not by telling them that they're wrong, but by asking more questions to the point that they kind of talk themselves into their own grave. That's the only way you can do this. The problem with this, the challenge with this, I'm going to tell you what it is up front, is that as you start asking people questions and allow them to explain their own logic, they will realize how little logic they actually have. And then at some point, they're going to not even want to talk anymore because it's going to be obvious that they're making themselves look stupid. But the key here is you don't tell them they're making themselves look stupid. You let them show themselves they're looking stupid by just asking questions. Just ask questions and let them talk. Ask questions and let them talk. Ask questions and let them talk. That's what we call the Socratic method. Do not go and tell them that they're wrong because they did this. That does not work. Some of you may have tried it at some points in your life. That's a failing strategy. Don't do it. All right. All that said, folks, persuasion over facts. Let me recap the points that I gave you here. I kind of mixed these all in together. Number one, objectivity is on life support. Number two, the media has expanded to where everybody's media now instead of just a few networks. Number three, I think the right started this by what they did to Obama, but the left took it 10 levels higher by what they did to Trump because they had access to social media and social media got a lot bigger. Number four, within the side that is winning is usually less emotional and less angry, and the side that's losing is more angry. So right now, the left is losing. So now they're really angry about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump just seems to draw a lot of emotion out of human beings, period. Number 5, mass media includes everybody, and it colors a lot of what we see, which is how a lot of people are getting most of their information these days. Number 6, my angle is that I'm not on either side. I'm just trying to show you what's happening here. So anyone who looks for objective and logical information, that's what I do. That's the source. That's the source that I am providing here. Number 7, why does subjectivity matter more than facts? Because you can take in subjectively things that agree with you all day, every day, and never come across anything that disagrees with you. Even colleges these days have what they call safe spaces, right? A safe space where you can't hear anything that disagrees with you, which is complete bullshit. But anyway, number 8, person can live their whole life only seeing one interpretation of things and believe that it's true because they're getting a lot of information. Can't say they're uninformed. They just have information all on one side of a conversation. Number 9, what do? Do not confront people by telling them that they're wrong. All right, that doesn't work. Number 10, use the Socratic method by asking questions and letting people talk. They will dig their own graves if they're willing to keep staying in conversation with you long enough to actually expose themselves. A lot of people won't even do that. All that said, let me see if we got any questions or comments. If you have a question or comment, go ahead and post it right now. I saw we had a couple on Instagram, so let me see what we got. And by the way, I do these lives Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. We lost the connection for a minute, then it came back. Karpinskim, good morning. Nicole, good morning. Mitzi Galvez, good morning. 3 Avery, good morning. Mitzi said, the problem is finding truth when news channels and media are biased. Yes, that's the new challenge for everyday people, is that we got to find our own sources. I did a video, Mitzi, explaining who my favorite news sources are, is on YouTube. And I suggest you watch that video, and I'll lay out for you who I like listening to and why. People who I think are trying to be as objective as possible and truthful. Again, no human can be completely objective, but people who are trying to be objective. Go find that video on my YouTube channel where I explain it. It's in the playlist. Same playlist that this video is going to be in is in that playlist. It's the social issues, current events playlist. Missy said, that's true, but also sad. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I don't know if it's sad. It's just the reality. It's just the reality of the situation. We just got to learn how to play the game. Avery said, who these people I'm going to run into? People who, again, they have their own reality that goes against your reality. So it's subjective. Whatever you believe is true, you're going to run to people who believe the exact opposite of you. And you're going to have to deal with them in some way, shape, or form. So I'm just letting you all know so you're ready. That's the whole point. Topic tomorrow, I don't know yet. I don't know what the topic's going to be. It depends on what happens in the news today. Because today, actually, I believe is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is I think he's having his hearing today. I think it's Robert F. Kennedy today, and I believe Tulsi Gabbard is tomorrow. I might have those backwards, but I do believe there are a couple more hearings for these confirmations for the people that Trump appointed to his cabinet. These people are coming up. I believe it's RFK today and Tulsi tomorrow, but it's some order like that. So depending on what happens in those hearings, for those of you who have never listened to one of those hearings, they come on YouTube. They're usually live streams on YouTube. I suggest you watch some of them so you can actually see what they're doing and how they're talking to these people, and you can have a better understanding of why the conversation is the conversation. Because what happens with the hearings is that there'll be half Democrats and half Republicans, and people hate Trump. So everybody that Trump has appointed, such as RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth already, Kristi Noem already, Pam Bondi already, Kash Patel already. He didn't go up yet. He comes up. That's going to be very entertaining. These next 3 are all going to be entertaining. RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel are all going to be very entertaining hearings. They are generally boring as shit. But these ones are going to be good because there's going to be a lot of arguing. And arguing is entertaining. That's why reality TV is popular, because people just argue and fight. Right? This is what people pay attention to. So these will be very interesting. I'm telling you, as you learn more of these, consume more of these, and you learn more about why things are happening here. So someone asked that I talk about ICE and immigration. Yes, I talked about it probably 2 or 3 times, Avery, but I'm going to talk about it again. I think I have a topic here. I'm probably holding that one till next week, about talking about that. We're going to be talking about, I got some ones that I know I'm not going to do yet this week. We're going to talk about equity and equality. We're going to talk about the dismantling of DEI. We're We're going to talk about Christianity not being respected. We're going to talk about MAGA, good and bad. But yeah, I talked about immigration, Avery, probably last week before I got kicked off TikTok. So it's on my YouTube channel. So yes, I did talk about it. O-Dog said, I don't know if you have heard of the pathos versus logos mode of persuasion. Logos of logic, it rarely trumps pathos, which is emotion. The left and right are emotional. Now, that's a good point that you made there, O-Dog. I never heard it called pathos versus logos, but what you're saying is completely correct. What I usually say is just logic and emotion. But yeah, what you're saying is correct. So logic never beats emotion, never. So if you're trying to persuade someone who's emotional by giving them logic, it doesn't work. Any of you want an example of this? Those of you who are men, you ever having a conversation with a woman and she's very emotional and you try to logically talk her out of it, you saw how that went, right? So that's what happens when you try to use logic against somebody who's emotional. It just doesn't work. That's why persuasion matters so much these days, because if you want to persuade somebody who is emotional, you have to give them some emotion that they can hold on to. If you just give them logic, you won't get through to them. They won't understand. Avery said he just paused the federal grants and loans. Doesn't that mean benefits as well? I gotta look into the details of that. I heard people talking about that. It depends on how long he paused it and for what reason and what he plans to do after that. So I think a lot of people are pulling those out of, they're not in full context. So that's what I would say for now. I got to look into it and find out what actually happened. And we all know the thing about Trump, and this is the challenge with the mainstream media, is that they take anything about him that could possibly be negative, they frame it as negative, and they put it out as if that's the whole story when it's not the whole story. So that's what I would say to that for now. So we'll see what happens. O-Dog said logos only works with entrepreneurs. Well, certain entrepreneurs, not all of them. All right, entrepreneurs get emotional too. They're still human. All right. So with all that said, folks, tomorrow, topic to be determined. I know that I'll be back on TikTok. My suspension will end around this time tomorrow morning, but I'm still going to be doing my live at the same time, starting at 8 o'clock. And then I might do something with TikTok later on that day. Maybe not. We'll see. And all the replays for all these live streams, if you ever missed one or I tell you that I talked about it already, it's on my YouTube channel. So my YouTube is YouTube/@DreB. That's where you can find my YouTube channel. Just look my name up, Dre Baldwin. I'm very easy to find on YouTube. All my replays and recordings will all be on YouTube. And eventually we're going to get them moved over to Rumble as well. So they'll be in two places, YouTube and Rumble. But right now, everything is on YouTube. WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. You want to work with me directly, get into our coaching program. That's Work on Your Game University. That's that. I will see everybody tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern. Work on your game. We out.